There's a version of you that you've been carrying around for years. A version that shows up too early in the morning, looks in the mirror, and feels that low, quiet dread, not of anything specific, just the vague weight of being you. You've told yourself stories about why your life turned out this way. Your parents were difficult. You were compared to someone better. You didn't get the breaks other people got. And maybe the worst part, you believe those stories complete. You've lived inside them so long they feel like facts. What if I told you that every single one of those stories might be a lie you've been telling yourself? Not because your pain isn't real, not because the hard things didn't happen, but because a psychologist who lived over 100 years ago discovered something so radical, so fundamentally threatening to how we understand ourselves, that when he first proposed it, even his closest colleagues walked away from it. He was the third giant of psychology, standing alongside Freud and Jung, and most people have never heard his name. His name was Alfred Adler, and the book we're talking about today presents his ideas in a way that might genuinely unsettle you. It's called The Courage to be Disliked, and it is one of the most quietly revolutionary books ever written about the human mind. The young man who arrives at the philosopher's house is ready to fight. He's heard the rumors that this philosopher teaches the world is simple, that happiness is available to everyone right now. The young man finds this offensive. He dislikes himself. He's plagued by feelings of inferiority. He's constantly afraid of other people's judgment, and he's convinced he will never truly change. So he's come to dismantle these cheerful, naive theories once and for all. The philosopher says something immediately strange. He says the world is not complicated. The world only seems complicated because of you. Think about well water, he says. It stays at 60 degrees all year round. In summer you drink it and it feels cool. In winter the same water from the same well feels warm. The water hasn't changed, but your experience of it changes completely based on where you're standing, what you're bringing to the moment. You don't live in an objective world. You live in a subjective world, a world you yourself are giving meaning to. And if you are the one giving meaning to the world, then if you change, the world will change too. Most of us think in terms of cause and effect. Something happened in my past, a difficult childhood, a failure, an emotional wound, and that event caused me to become who I am today. This is the Freudian view. Your present self is the product of what happened to you. It feels deeply true. Adler says it's wrong, not that hard things didn't happen to you, but that those things do not determine who you become. What determines who you become is the meaning you assign to those events, and that assignment is something you are doing right now, active, whether you realize it or not. Adler called this teleology the study of purpose rather than cause. Instead of asking what made me this way, we should be asking what am I trying to achieve by being this way? The young man tells the philosopher about a friend who has been shut in his room for years. He wants to go outside. He genuinely does. But whenever he tries, his heart races, his legs shake, his body refuses. Surely this is caused by something, a trauma, a bad experience. The philosopher says, what if your friend has decided not to go outside and is creating the physical symptoms as a means to achieve that goal? The young man is disgusted. You're saying he's faking. No, the philosopher says, the anxiety is real. The racing heart is real. But consider what happens when your friend stays in his room. His parents focus all their attention on him. They worry. They care. If he stepped outside, he would become just another ordinary person, moving through an indifferent world with no guarantee of being noticed or valued. Inside his room, he is the center of their universe. The suffering is real, but it's also serving a function. This idea that we use our symptoms, our anxiety, even our anger as tools toward a goal we may not consciously acknowledge is one of the most unsettling things Adler ever proposed. To demonstrate it, the philosopher asks about anger. The young man admits that recently at a coffee shop, a waiter spilled coffee on his jacket and he screamed at him in front of everyone. The anger just came out, he says. Did it? The philosopher asks. If your boss had been standing right there, would you have screamed? Probably not. There is a story Adler tells about a mother and her daughter arguing loudly. The phone rings. The mother picks it up and her voice transforms instantly into sweetness and calm. It's her daughter's teacher. She speaks pleasantly for 5 minutes. She hangs up and goes straight back to screaming. Anger that can be switched on and off that quickly is not a force that controls us. It is a tool we choose to use. You didn't lose your temper at the waiter, the philosopher says. You took out the emotion of anger in order to dominate him, to make him submit, to avoid the slower and more effortful process of explaining calmly what had happened. Anger was the shortcut. Why do I hate myself? The young man asks on the second night. If everything is purposeful, what purpose could there be in someone not liking themselves? The philosopher says, you are afraid of being hurt in relationships. You are afraid of being rejected and found wanting. And so, before anyone else can reject you, you reject yourself first. By building a case against yourself so thorough and so persuasive, you give yourself a reason to never fully engage with other people. You have turned your self-loathing into a defense system. Adler made a crucial distinction here that most people miss. There is a difference between a feeling of inferiority and an inferiority complex. A feeling of inferiority is actually healthy. It's the gap between who you are and who you want to become. Every chef who wants to improve has it. Every athlete who trains harder after a loss has it. The feeling of inferiority is a launchpad for growth. An inferiority complex is what happens when you take that feeling and use it as an excuse. I'm not educated enough, so I can't succeed. I'm not attractive enough, so I can't find love. You have converted a feeling into a life sentence. And then there is the superiority complex, which looks like the opposite but isn't. It's the shadow side of the same wound. The person who name drops constantly, who brags about their connections, who swings their credentials around like a weapon. They are not doing so because they feel secure. They are doing so because they don't. As Adler put it directly, the one who boasts does so only out of a feeling of inferiority. And there is a third path, darker and more subtle. Some people make a show of their suffering. They present their wounds not to get help, but to control the people around them. By saying, "You don't know what I've been through," they make themselves untouchable, special through misfortune. And as long as their misfortune is their identity, they will always need that misfortune. All of these patterns, the inferiority complex, the superiority complex, the weaponization of suffering, they all arise inside relationships with other people, which leads to Adler's most radical claim. All problems are interpersonal relationship problems. If you were entirely alone in the universe, you wouldn't feel inferior because there would be no one to compare yourself to. You wouldn't crave recognition because there would be no one to recognize you. Even loneliness requires the presence of other people to exist, because loneliness is the feeling of being excluded from a world that contains others. The young man admits on the third night that he sees other people as enemies. He walks through the world braced for attack, convinced that everyone around him is watching and judging and ready to find him lack. The philosopher says, that is because you have decided life is a competition, and in competitions everyone is your rival, and rivals are, by definition, your adversary. Even if you win, you can't relax. You have to keep winning. You can never truly celebrate another person's success, because to you, their success is your loss. Life is not a competition, the philosopher says. There is no winner and no loser. There is only the question of whether you are moving forward. So what is freedom? The young man asks. And the philosopher says something that sounds almost criminal at first. He says, you need to stop seeking recognition from other people. Every time you perform for someone else's approval, you are outsourcing the meaning of your life. You are handing the remote control of your self-worth to someone else, and then wondering why you never feel at peace. The philosopher introduces a concept that changes everything: the separation of tasks. Every interpersonal problem can be sorted by asking one simple question. Whose task is this? A parent wants their child to study. Is getting the child to study the parent's task? No. The consequences of not studying will be experienced by the child, not parent. The parent can create an environment and express willingness to help, but the studying is the child's task. This principle extends everywhere. Whether your boss likes you or not, that is his task. What other people think of you, that is their task. What you do with your own life, your own integrity, your own day, that is yours. And here is where freedom enters. The philosopher defines freedom in a way that most people find jarring at first. He says, freedom is being disliked by other people, not because being disliked is the goal, but because the willingness to be disliked, the willingness to live according to your own values even when it earns you disapproval, is the only condition under which genuine freedom becomes possible. If you must be liked by everyone, you are not free. You are a hostage. When you are not afraid of being disliked, when you understand that someone's disapproval is their task and not your emergency, your relationships will not become colder. They will become real, because you will finally be showing up as yourself. On the fourth night, the conversation deepens into community, feeling Adler's most ambitious concept: not just your family or your neighborhood, all of humanity, past and present and future, every living thing. He acknowledged this sounds impossibly grand, but in practical terms, it comes down to this. Can you see other people as your comrades rather than your judges? Do you have a place where you feel it is okay for you to exist? A sense of belonging is not something you are given. It is something you build through actively contributing to the communities you are part of, through choosing to participate rather than merely observe. And here the philosopher says something that reshapes how we understand relationships. He says we should not praise each other. The young man thinks this is absurd. The philosopher says, look at what happens. When someone praises you, someone perceived as above you judges that your performance met their standard and signals their approval. Praise is a form of judgment, and judgment comes from a vertical relationship, a relationship where one person is above and the other is below. Adler believed all interpersonal relationships should be horizontal. Not that everyone is equally skilled, clearly they're not, but that human worth has no hierarchy. You and I are different. We are not the same, but we are equal. And when we treat each other from that position of equality, we stop needing to either earn or grant approval. Instead of praising someone, you thank them. Instead of telling them they did well, you tell them how their action affected you, how it helped, what it changed, why it mattered. Gratitude is not judgment. Gratitude is a genuine expression from one equal to another. One of the deepest human needs, Adler believed, is to feel that you are of use to someone. Not because you performed at the right level, not because you earned a grade, but because your existence genuinely made a difference in someone else's life. And here is the subtle, crucial point. The contribution does not need to be visible. It does not need to be acknowledged. What matters is the subjective sense, the inner feeling that you are of use to someone. That feeling, not the recognition, not the praise, not the reward, that is where real self-worth lives. That is what Adler meant by happiness. Happiness is the feeling of contribution. On the fifth and final night, the young man asks about the meaning of life itself. He says he needs to accomplish something that matters, something that proves he was here, something that leaves a mark. Otherwise, what is any of this for? The philosopher says, you are thinking of your life as a line, as a path that has to arrive somewhere, and everything in between is just the road toward the destination. But life is not a line. It is a series of moments. Imagine pressing a piece of chalk to paper and drawing what looks like a line, but when you look at it under a magnifying glass, you see it is not a line at all. It is a sequence of individual dots, each one separate, each one complete in itself. Your life is not a preparation for something. Your life is happening right now, not in 5 years when you've figured everything out, not after you've achieved the thing that will finally make you feel worthy. Now, this conversation, this breath, this choice, this is your life. Adler called this energio living, a kind of movement in which the process itself is the outcome. Think about dancing. When you dance, you are not trying to get somewhere. The dancing is the point. You don't say, I will be happy when I reach the other side of the dance floor. You are already doing the thing. The doing is the having. And the philosopher talks about the greatest life lie of all. Not the lies we tell other people, the lie we tell ourselves. When we look at the past and say, my life has been shaped by what happened to me. Or when we look at the future and say, I will be ready to live fully once things are different. Both of these moves, looking back and looking forward, are ways of escaping the only moment in which we actually exist. He says, imagine you are on a theater stage. If the house lights are on and the stage lights are dim, you can see all the way to the back of the auditorium. But if you are standing under a single bright spotlight, you can't see anything beyond the circle of light around you. You can only see here. You can only be here. Living in the here and now is not hedonism. It is the recognition that this moment, not the analyzed past or the imagined future, is where your agency actually lives. This is where you can act. This is where change is possible. Alfred Adler believed that human beings are not victims of their pasts. He believed the stories we tell about our history, the traumas that explain our limitations, the circumstances that justify our fears are not the cause of our present. They are, in most cases, the effect. We reach backward into our memories and pull out evidence to support a conclusion we have already secretly reached, that we cannot change, that we are not safe enough to try, that it's better to stay where we are. The alternative is community feel, the ability to genuinely see other people as your comrades, the ability to contribute something, anything to the world around you, and to feel the worth of that contribution, not because someone praised you for it, but because you know in some quiet, private way that you made a difference. This does not require you to become someone extraordinary. It does not require you to climb a mountain or leave a legacy or win any competition. It only requires you to show up to the work in front of you, to the people in your life, to this moment right now, with the understanding that this moment is not practice. This is the performance. This is the only performance there is. And the courage required is not the courage of the soldier or the person who appears fearless. It is quieter and harder. It is the courage to accept yourself as you are, knowing you are not perfect and moving forward anyway. It is the courage to build a horizontal relationship with even one person, to treat them as an equal, to receive their honesty, to not need their praise in order to feel valid. It is the courage to pursue do what matters to you, even when other people disapprove, even when they dislike you for it. It is, in the end, exactly what the title says. The courage to be disliked. Adler said, someone has to start. Other people might not be cooperative, but that is not connected to you. My advice is this: you should start, with no regard to whether others are cooperative or not. That is the whole thing. Start now, here, with the life you have, in the body you have, with the relationships you have. The world is not waiting for you to become someone else. It is already here, already simple, already available. The question is whether you have the courage to see it that you do. You just have to choose it.